Four Mississauga mayoral candidates touched on topics surrounding affordability, including food insecurity and housing. And it happened last night during a debate organized by Food Banks Mississauga. And we're joined live now by the CEO of Food Banks Mississauga, Meghan Nicholls, to break it all down for us. Meghan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll start off with just painting a picture of what the food bank situation and the usage is in the city of Mississauga.
So Food Banks Mississauga is the largest social services organization in Mississauga, and we serve a network of 70 agencies that provide food to families who are struggling financially across the city of Mississauga. And so this year we'll provide food for over 10 million meals just in Mississauga alone. And we're seeing now, we used to serve 19,000 people a year, and now we're serving 19,000 people a month. And so the numbers have just increased as folks are just struggling financially with the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, we've heard that increase, popping up across Canada, but to hear that breakdown right in the city of Mississauga, 19,000 people a month is just something that is obviously an issue that we need to tackle. And did you find that any of the four candidates who attended last night, were there ideas and policies that they put in place that you think might stand out to those who are looking to solve this problem, including Food Banks Mississauga?
Well, Mississauga's only ever had two mayors.
Yeah.
And so looking to have a third mayor, it's an important time for us to make sure that the issues that are affecting vulnerable people in Mississauga are coming to the forefront. And so I was thrilled that the candidates were willing to come and debate about food security, income security, and housing during this important time. And also just really pleased that hundreds of my neighbors, because I live in Mississauga too, were interested to come out or watch online and really engage in these important issues right now. Because for people who perhaps aren't experiencing, inflation in the same way, we all experience it at the grocery store. You're like, wow, I can't believe how much that costs. But for some people, it's an annoyance. For other people, it's the difference between having food and not having food. So to have such a great body of folks listening and participating about these important issues gives me hope that there's possibilities for change here in the future.
What do you need from the future mayor of Mississauga in order to help food banks in that city and at least help the residents, the vulnerable ones who are struggling, try to get away from having to use a food bank?
Well, one of the biggest issues for people is housing and the cost of housing. Over 70% of our clients pay regular market rent. They're not living in social housing. They're not being supported with their housing. So they're paying the same as everybody else, even if their incomes are very low. So there was lots of talk about housing last night. I think typically in municipal elections, the talk is often about property tax, and that isn't a concern for the 70% of food bank clients. People living vulnerably are trying to find an affordable place to rent. They're not worried about mortgage rates. They're not worried about, CMHC rules on purchasing. And so I think there's an opportunity to continue to make sure that our conversations about housing cover the needs of all economic demographics, because that's what's going to decrease people using food banks when their basic costs of living are affordable and they have that money to be able to do what they need to do.
Was there something that you heard last night that really stood out to you?
I don't think there's a silver bullet that's going to solve this issue. And so I heard a lot of interesting ideas about bringing more housing to Mississauga. But I think there's more thinking to do to make sure that it's targeted for the most vulnerable in our communities. And so my hope is that as we head towards the election on June 10th, that both candidates and residents continue to think about perhaps not just their own needs, their own property tax maybe, but the most vulnerable in our communities, and recognize that by lifting everybody up, it builds the kind of community that we can all thrive and really live our best lives in.
Yeah, you said the word community, right?
Yeah.
Being able to help each other and build that community right there.
Our neighbors.
Yeah, for sure. Meghan Nicholls, thank you so much for joining us here.
You.
We really do appreciate your time, and thank you for organizing, that debate and having those questions put to some of the candidates.
Thanks for helping us get it out there.
Yeah, no